Hey, everybody, it's Tony Rubleski with the Don't Quit, Do It Now podcast. This week, I want to talk about the power of asking, and it comes straight out of my brand new book called Don't Quit, Do It. It's one of the chapters in there. It's called Lesson 41. And really, this comes from the genesis of when I talk to lots of CEOs, nonprofit leaders, and especially a lot of creative folks who I love even more because they got these great ideas in their head, but many times they're afraid to market. And they're even more afraid typically to ask for people to help them. So I want to throw some key stories at you from the new book, but more importantly, a couple of lessons about why asking is so important to not only life success, parenting, volunteer work, creativity. You don't get, as the old saying is, unless you ask. So I want to start out with a couple quick examples of this straight out of the book. I want to take you back in time to 2007, May, Los Angeles. And I'm holding up a copy of the old Wired magazine. It has a picture with the caption Evil Genius, describing one of Apple's new products back in 2007. And why this particular episode is talking about this story to start is this. I didn't know, and it's dated May 30th, 2008, that I would meet the person that autographed this cover. His name is Jeff Bezos. I'm not making this up. You probably know his company, Amazon.com. But I was in Los Angeles that year for BookExpo America with my publisher, David Hancock. Little did I know until I looked at the brochure that the keynote speaker was Jeff Bezos talking about a new product called Kindle. I'm like, what's this Kindle thing? Is it a match? So I, like the other 800 people in attendance, were very eager to hear what he was going to say. And I'll paraphrase because it's not every day you get a chance to meet a billionaire. And again, this is the power of asking. He had an entourage when I saw him out in the hallway before he went on. I said, hey, Jeff, I'm a big fan of Amazon. We're going to launch my book. I'm an author. Would you mind signing this? Now, he had security. He had PR handlers, as you might imagine. But I'll say this. He was not as famous or well-known almost 20 years ago, back in 2007. Okay? So I'm not afraid. You can tell I'm a little bold. I'm the hope dealer, so I'm always the optimist. But I went up to him and he signed this. So I have no idea if this thing is worth anything, but it's not every day that you get a chance to, like Forrest Gump, kind of bumble into a billionaire who later became one of the world's richest men financially with a company that's known everywhere you go, Amazon, okay? But I remember this, his keynote that day, he talked like a TEDx talk. He had testimonials, he had pictures, he had projections. And I remember what he said at the end of the talk was so powerful. He looked at the audience and he said, let me give you one piece of advice. He said, sometimes you have to be willing to be misunderstood. I wrote it down. I've never forgotten it, obviously, and I share it again also to tie into this episode of why asking is important. You're going to be misunderstood when you do anything in life. You're going to have people that don't like you either physically, that are maybe far away, maybe from the internet, maybe it's social media, but I want to give you some encouragement as the hope dealer. That's one of my nicknames amongst many, is that it's okay to have people tell you no. It's okay if you get some people that don't like your mission or your passion. That's life. I went to a baseball game yesterday with my son. And in the Major League Baseball, it's the Detroit Tigers, go Tigers. You don't see a baseball player that hits 1,000. They don't get up there 10 bats and hit 10 times in a row typically. And what's interesting, if you can hit 300, which is 3 out of 10 in the major leagues, you make millions of dollars at that level of baseball. What that tells you is they're going to get up there on average 10 times. They're going to strike out, pop out, or ground out. 7 times out of 10, they're going to fail. They're only going to do the right thing 3 times out of 10. So let me draw another analogy, the power of asking. You may ask for an introduction or referral. We're going to spend a future episode or 2 on the power of referrals because to me, it's a lot easier to market that way than trying to do cold calling, okay? But if you look at that analogy, you don't get unless you ask, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. I am baffled at how many people don't ask for an introduction. Or, hey, who's a resource or a good contact you might introduce me to? Or, hey, what's a good program you recommend for like my classes online? What's a good AI search engine that you recommend? Or what's a good program or instructor you recommend? Every day, I think the challenge is we either forget to ask or we become afraid. See, in this podcast, it's going to be real, raw, and very relevant in many episodes. I'm not going to sugarcoat, is that all these years of teaching people, learning, creating, running multiple companies, meeting with hundreds of CEOs and artists and entrepreneurs, I'm like a fly on the wall that looks for patterns. So if you're taking a note here, Look for patterns of people around you that are successful. I can almost guarantee you that they're not afraid to ask. They're not shy. They don't take a no personally. And again, I think to me, asking as we look, if you're listening to this episode right now, wherever you might be, I want to take one big thing and plant it in your mind. Start asking for more from life. You'll be shocked at how many people are actually willing to help you, and that some are even going to say to you, I thought you never ask. But it's you becoming aware of it, you feeling confident, and if you get turned down, not taking it personally, so you stop asking going forward. Let me give another quick example here of asking. This was the same year. This was January 2007. It was Las Vegas, Nevada. I have the picture here as proof, okay? I'm in the picture there to the right, and the gentleman in the middle is not Hulk Hogan. His name is Mick Fleetwood. He's in a rock group you might have heard called Fleetwood Mac. I think they've sold hundreds of millions of albums. Have AI look it up for you, okay? They've sold a lot is my point. But I've never forgotten that moment because I was booked to speak at a conference called PPAI at Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas. And I spoke the day before. Mick Fleetwood, who I showed you in the photo, was the keynote speaker. He made a whole lot more money than I did, but he's a rock star. I'm just the hope dealer, okay? But I remember going to the promoter before Mick won, and I said, Jeff, I have a rumors LP. I would love to meet Mick Fleetwood. I won't say a word. I'll be very respectful. And I remember him saying, nope, can't do it. I said, Jeff, I got to fly out real quick out of here to get back to Michigan. Is there any chance? He's like, Tony, it's only for sponsors. I said, look, I'd really love to meet him. I'm a huge rock and roll fan. I won't say a word. And after the third ask, he said, all right, here's the deal. Come with me. Don't say a word. And you have to wait till Mick is done in the green room with our sponsors before he'll autograph your item. But don't say a word. You can sit in the room, stand against the wall, and be like a mouse. So my friend in the picture, I'll hold it up again here, Dave Sheffield from Iowa, was with me that day. And he's looking at me like, oh my God, this is going to happen. So I kid you not, we sat in the green room against the wall for about 30 minutes. There was 2 couches in there. Mick is a very tall man. He was in the corner of the room talking to the sponsors that were sitting on the couch. And he was telling these magnificent stories about his career in Fleetwood Mac. One in particular, he talked about how they wrote the song Tusk. Okay. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but I never forgot the core genius of what he shared with us 10 people in the room. He said, basically, I'm in the south of France one morning, kind of had a fun night. Basically, was probably a little hungover. That was my guesstimate. And he goes, I hear this marching band, kind of like, band coming down the street, like making all kinds of noise and horns through my window. And he's like, what is this noise? He goes, I heard that. And he goes, wait a minute. I had this idea. So I called Lindsay. He said, on the song Tusk, what if we put in some horns or a marching band? So if you hear that song, they ended up later hiring a USC marching band who didn't charge them to record a large brass ensemble for the song Tusk, which finally made it on one of their records. So I tell you that little rock and roll moment because I wasn't supposed to be in the room, but I asked. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to keep asking until Jeff maybe gets kind of mad at me. I know he's my client. He's a meeting planner. But I thought, what the heck? There's a rock star 50 feet away from you. You may never get a chance like this again. I remember my friend Dave looked at me while we're sitting there. He goes, dude, you're like the best friend ever. I'm like, dude, I can't believe we're standing here. Here's the lesson. Mick Fleetwood didn't know me. I didn't write a big check as a corporate sponsor. I was just one of the other speakers on the event. But I always want to look back on my life, and I want to encourage each of you, no matter where you're hearing this message at any point in time, is don't give up on asking. I didn't want to look back 10 or 15 years later and go, you know what, I should have maybe asked him a couple more times. I gave up too soon. Darn it, it would have been really cool to meet Mick Fleetwood. Postscript story. Several years later, I took my daughter Paige, who's my oldest, to see Fleetwood Mac. Okay, this would have been 2017, so it was 10 years later for her birthday gift. Fast forward a few years later on her 21st birthday, she came to my office, and I didn't know this, but I had in a little gift bag the autographed Rumors LP that Mick Fleetwood signed. It's a beautiful record, really good signature. She walked into my office, and I went to hand her the gift, and she had her Fleetwood Mac shirt on from the concert from a few years earlier. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a huge God wink. I slid the bag over to her. She's going through the wrapping paper. She looks, she goes, oh my God. She started to cry a little bit. And I say that because you never know the impact of putting it out there. I didn't know I'd get a chance to meet him, yet alone get a chance to get a couple of autographs. And several years later, give my daughter on her 21st birthday, one of her favorite bands, this gift that I was thinking about waiting until I was dead to give to anybody, okay, like an heirloom. So it's also a lot of fun. So, coming straight out of the new book, Don't Quit, Do It. One of the lessons of the 50 is the power of asking. There's more details in the book, but I really want you to take away a couple of nuggets here. Life is short. You aren't going to get hurt if you ask. I always say persist a little bit. We're going to talk a lot in this YouTube channel, many episodes about mindset to continue to move because people are trained to say, nope, we're all set. We're good for now. That's usually a white lie. And I'm not advocating that you be pushy, that you're arrogant, you're belligerent, but we give up too soon. So again, if you stayed this long, I appreciate you checking out this episode on the power of asking. And remember, get out there and make it happen.